Welcome to Makers International, a podcast of makers, connecting with makers from all around the world. Here's your hosts, Jamie Page, Chris Cute, and now, Richard Morley.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good times, whatever time it is, wherever you are listening. Join with me, as always, Mr. Chris Cute.
Hello.
And Mr. Jamie Page.
Hello.
And obviously this week I thought I'd turn up. Apologies for missing last week's show, not just to you, the listener, but also to Blue Light Turner, because I've said it before, I'll say it again, I genuinely love it when we have people on, particularly those that I don't know, because I like to kind of find out more about people that I don't know in the community. So I dropped the ball that week. I do apologise. So wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last, no doubt. It's just
we dealt with it.
Exactly.
It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. It's not like you got 100% attendance, unlike somebody.
Yeah, Chris, I still think we should do like a cheeky little early 1 week when
midweek show, a midweek show without letting Jamie know.
We won't tell Jamie. Hang on. So the clocks will go back, won't they?
Spring forward, fall back. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll have to be 6 months' time. So Jamie will be like, "Oh, where are they?" Be like an hour late. Could work. It could work. Anyway, talking of it could work, welcome to this week's show. As always, tonight's show is brought to you in part by Yorkshire Grit, the Woodturners Abrasive Paste, our good friend Chad at Mad Crafting, Pam over at Highland Boxes, and also Steve Harneal at Harneal Media, who does all the website-y things. And actually, I think we have another apology. Welcome to the apology show. Didn't we have like an issue with the website this week where the server went down and crazy?
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah, unfortunately, it's now should now be up and running. Steve got on the job at about 4 o'clock in the morning, I want to say. So, big thanks to Steve for getting that all sorted for us. He worked his tushy off and got it back up and running ASAP.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how, like most things, you press the buttons and you just expect it to work. How they work, nobody knows, nobody cares until they go wrong. So yeah, awesome. So as always, like I said, the sponsors, they really do make us able to sort of do this and give things out to you. So if you want to find out about our sponsors, then do head on over to that website, which hopefully is now working, fingers crossed, and makersinternationalpodcast.com/sponsors, and all the information is up there. You might not be able to read it, but it is actually up there.
It's in Swahili, but you know.
No, I was just thinking if the website's down.
There's a translator there. If it's in Swahili, you will be able to read it.
Okay, cool.
Steve put that up there as well.
We're never going to get started today, Richard. Just muddle through. Go, do the best you can, brother.
That's fine. Muddle through every week, as we always do. Steve's in the chat as well. He says the website's up and running and it's working fine. So yeah, honestly, Steve, thank you so much for doing that, because like I said, we don't know how to do it. We wouldn't have a clue. So if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't actually be a website.
Cheers to Steve.
Yeah, exactly. Steve taking my credit again.
Oh, Jamie, get over it. So we also have in the live audience, we'll give them a quick shout out. Not everyone, no doubt, because it's whizzing past this week. Really quick, actually. So there are Steve Coombs, Anna B. Hi, Anna. Andy Heal from AH Bespoke, SK Crafts, Claire's Crafty Corner, Would If I Could, John C. And there's others as well. If I haven't mentioned you, I do apologise. But like I said, it's kind of whizzing past pretty quickly. And also, welcome to those people listening in the future. We're coming to you from the past. Yeah.
That was a bit creepy.
I'm trying to look at different things and segue into the next, and I'm just going to give up now. And Chris, have we got any random listener questions from the week? I know we've got one. Have we got any more?
No, well, we have one. A random question, and we have several others from our friend Andy Pugh. But the random question this week comes from your better half, and it's in celebration of Father's Day. So for everybody who happens to be a dad out there, and trust me, there are a lot of women who are out there who are being dads as well, because there is not a guy around. So whether you're a woman or a dad, happy Father's Day to you. The question is related to that, since today happens to be Father's Day, and it's from Kat. Kat wants to know, and this is a two-part question, boys, so listen up, and you have to answer in the order in which they are asked. First question is, what's the best advice your father ever gave you? And what advice of his did you ignore to your peril? So,
who's going to go first on that one?
Well, I can go first on that one if you want. I mean, the best advice my father, and you'd have to understand my dad, and there's no way we would even have time for me to explain this to you, but my dad had a very unique way of ingraining things into my brothers and my sister and I. Just leave it at that. My dad ingrained in me at a very young age, and it sounds like a cliche, but I'm telling you, it has benefited me greatly throughout my life. And it's work first, play later, or play when it's done. You work first, you play when it's done. And that has been my work ethic since I started working for somebody else. And that has paid off huge dividends for me. It meant that I didn't get to play as much, but you know what? I got the job done. And, you know, when you're working, normally success follows you. What advice of his
that
did
actually explains a few things, though, Chris.
How so?
When you think about it, because they do say all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That explains why you're so dull.
It does to a certain extent, but when I have 15 minutes, I'm not so dull. Let me quite grant you that. The advice I ignored of his to my peril, and it was each and every. I don't have a specific example to give you, but it was each and every time I would say something I wanted to do, and my dad would look at me and go, "I wouldn't do that," and then I would ignore it. And then each and every time, basically, I should have listened to him because, yeah, it's kind of like the redneck who goes, "Hey, watch this," just before he dies. You know, it's like, you know,
hold this.
It's like, hold my beer. Watch this, boys. No, it never ends well. So, yeah, every time that my dad said, I wouldn't do that, and I went ahead and did it anyway, yeah, that was the advice that I ignored. So, there you go. Jamie?
What about you, Jamie?
I'm trying to think of what I can say for the second part of that question, because I genuinely can't think of anything really. It almost seems like my dad was right, and I hate to say that. Every time he said something, I listened to him, and he was right. Because it seems like every time he ever told me anything, growing up, or even into growing up, like, and all that sort of stuff, he seemed like he was right in what he said, because I'd obviously listened.
So you never ignored him. You never said, you know,
no,
to heck with it. I want to do this anyway, and you went ahead and did it. You never did that.
No,
God bless
you. Always kind of. I was never really one to rebel. That was almost up to my sister.
I'm your polar opposite. I can tell you that, because as soon as somebody tells me I can't do something, I want to do it. Okay.
With regards to what advice, I guess it'd be something to do with joinery. It was something like every hour's a go or something like that.
Okay. All right.
Do you know what? I can actually see your dad saying that to you, Jamie. I can see the conversation now. In fact, Chris, have you seen the? In fact, anybody, have you seen the Despicable Me franchise films?
Yes, I have.
Have you seen the clip where with Groot as a kid in the playground with his shorts and his lollipop and? Do you see that? Remember that?
Yeah.
I can just imagine that. That's Jamie, and his dad's. Jamie's like that. Oh yeah.
What about you, Mr. Morley?
Well, very similar to Jamie. I can't actually remember, what bit of advice I then ignored to my peril, because I don't. I mean, there was loads of things that he said, "Don't do that," and I went off and did it, and I was like, well, actually, that actually worked. But the one piece of advice, genuinely, the one piece of advice he gave me was to do with kind of picking your friends and your work colleagues or picking your friends from your work colleagues. It probably makes more sense. And how do you balance that work colleague friend relationship? Yeah,
very, very difficult.
And it can be very difficult, but he made it very easy. And I've genuinely stuck to this my whole working life, and it works brilliantly. And he said, just ask yourself one question: would you have them around your house for dinner? And
Okay.
if the answer's yes, then you can get on. If you wouldn't, that's it. And it just keeps things on a nice, even keel.
My problem with that, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, that's actually great advice. But when I was working, I had probably 12 people that were working for me that I considered my friends. Okay. And how do I relate? It's kind of like watching Gordon Ramsay on Hell's Kitchen. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah,
like
I know.
pulling teeth out.
But
You got a stupid sandwich.
no, but the only way I was able to make that work and remain friends with people was because I was their boss. The only way I could remain friends with them was to let them know workers work. Outside the door is a different story. It's just one of those things, and it's not because not a lot of people are willing to accept that. Because a lot of people want to take advantage of what they consider your friendship at work, and that just doesn't fly. It's like, no, that's not happening. When we get outside this door, yeah, we can have a beer together. We'll get some wings. We'll go to the beach. I don't care. But when we're inside these four walls, this is friggin' business. And so it's time to get serious, and there's no friendship here. I'm sorry. It's business. That's very difficult to get across to people sometimes.
Yeah, because people just assume that friends means friends
wherever you are.
Wherever you are, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that doesn't happen. So, yeah, great question, Kat. Thank you for the Father's Day question.
Yes, very good. Very good.
And we can move on to Andy's questions if you'd like. I mean, some of them, they're all pertinent to what we're talking about today, so we might as well dive into it, unless, Richard, you've got a different way to enter this little topic that we're having today.
Well, I mean, I'm going to assume that nobody actually reads the descriptions to these podcasts and either just listens to it in the hope that it'll be something relevant or amusing for them to listen to, or just out of complete surprise. So, and I think tonight's topic was kind of about something that we talked about with Jamie, and something that I banded around as well. Hopefully you're not listening to tonight's show thinking this is it and this is the last one, because we're not finished and not doing it again that we know of. So we're talking about kind of our favourite 5 finishes and what finishes we use. And I think, Jamie, you were talking about French polishing a bowl or something, weren't you? And it came about.
Yeah, I've obviously seen people French polish things like tables and all sorts of furniture and even guitars and all that sort of stuff, or other instruments. And I kind of sat back and thought to myself one day that I want to try French polishing a bowl while it's on the lathe. Just a random thought come to me of, I wonder if I could try that and see what it would come out like.
Well, I can tell you that French polishing a bowl on a lathe is not the quick process that you might think it is. And if there are people out there that think,
yeah, I know it can be
French polishing is a very tedious and very lengthy process that must be done. And I don't know, only because I have never tried to, because, oh God, I've never tried to French polish something that was actually spinning and creating friction at the same time. I've always done like tabletops, things or ornamental pieces. And I haven't, and I'm going to be dead honest with you. I have only French polished a few things in my life just because it was such tedious work. And there were other ways, but it's kind of like hand cutting dovetails. If you're looking to challenge yourself, you want to do it. You want to do it a couple times and get it right. And once you get it right, you got, okay, I've done that, and I'm going to move on. And it's just not a technique that I have employed. Quite honestly, in 15 years, I haven't done French polishing in 15 years. It's just because it's an absolutely gorgeous finish, Jamie. I'm not taking it, but I don't want anybody to get the impression they can put a bowl on their lathe and French polish it and be done in 30 minutes. No, we're talking about days work here. I mean, because
Yeah.
in order to do a true French polish, you've got work to do, and it doesn't take 30 minutes. It takes more than a day. Trust me.
So what? There's people out in the chat that are basically saying it's not working. Now, when I say doing a French polish, I don't mean the stages of turn the lathe on, hold the rag to the lathe, and let it just spin. That's not how I'm talking about doing it. I'm talking about it. Treat the wood as if it were a flat piece. So
Gotcha.
you go round, spin it by hand, go round, spin it by hand, and then let it set.
Yeah.
So is this a good time to sort of define French polishing, for want of a better phrase? Now, I'm not a French polisher. When I first started woodworking, I actually took a night class. It was about 4 hours, so it was literally a night class with a French polisher in Sheffield. Hello, Pusscat. Was that your cat, Chris?
Yeah, she was.
I just heard a cat go meow.
She was just down here yelling at me.
Jamie.
She'll live.
So it was like a 4-hour class with a time served old school French polisher. That was his trade. And one thing he said to me was, French polishing is not about making a rubber, dipping it in some shellac, doing a little figure of 8 a few times, making it shiny and moving on. It's the whole process from the time that the piece is assembled. It's the whole finishing process. So it is staining, colouring, grain filling, then applying shellac with a mop, and then with a rubber, and all of those stages.
It's a pain, it's a pain in the butt, and I don't. I don't want. Having. Let me kind of describe what I see myself as a woodworker. When you look at the type of woodworker that you might be categorized as, I am more of a shaker style woodworker, meaning that I don't do a lot of frills on anything that I make. I don't worry about making handmade coves. I don't worry about cutting hand-cut dovetails. I worry more about function than I do form, if that makes any sense. And it's not that I don't want it to look pretty. It's just that I want it to work, and I don't really want to go through the effort to be making Queen Anne furniture. It's just not something I aspire to do. But I can tell you this, and this is honest to God, the truth. If you make a great piece and put a mediocre finish on it, it's going to look mediocre. If you make a mediocre piece and put a great finish on it, it's going to look fantastic. So the problem with most woodworkers that I've talked to, because I've talked to a lot of them about finishing, because people tend to think that I know a little bit about that, is that when we're all working and we're going, okay, I've got this joint done, I've got this joint done, I've got this big, they all want to slap a finish on it and call it done. And if there's ever a time when you're working with something that you really want to look good, that you absolutely should slow the heck down, it's finishing. And we all get to that point where we've put it together and we're all anxious to just get it done and look at it, go, oh, isn't that great? But no, I mean, seriously, patience comes at the end, not the beginning. You have to really be patient with what you're doing. In order to make it look great.
It's almost like the thing gets put together and assembled and glued up, and that's when all the hard work starts.
Exactly.
Talking about.
Well, it's not hard work. It's just you have to slow your process down as quickly as you built that.
Tedious.
Cut that time in by 75%, and take your time to put a good finish on that piece. Because if you do put a good finish on that piece, no matter how well you built it, people are going to go, wow. And I don't care if you built something that was really fantastic and you showed great carpentry and woodworking skills. If you rush and put a mediocre finish on that, they're just going to go, yeah, that looks nice. That's the difference. It really is. And that would be the best advice I could give to anybody who's talking about finishing.
So what was the sort of finishing that you wanted to do, Jamie? Was it like the full
the full works, really? So if it meant buying another chuck, a cheap chuck, just to hold the bowl in place, then so be it. You know, or leave it on the worm screw, so be it. You know.
I mean, presumably you could, once you get to the polishing stage on that bowl, you could take it out of the chuck and do it by hand. You know,
Yeah, I guess you could do, yeah. Could do, or make some sort of jig where it sits on like a cushion or something like that. So yeah, I can't remember. So I think it was Richard the Beard said. Let's quickly scroll up. I think he said, where is it? Someone in these. There you go. My mother-in-law owned a snooker table cue manufacture business. He's seen his brother-in-law spend weeks with a French polisher.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing about, I guess, finishing in general is it's all well and good having a really nice finish, whatever it is, but it's I wouldn't necessarily think myself to put a French polish or shellac onto a snooker cue.
I can see why. I can see
why you wouldn't.
I can see why it would be done. I can see why it would be done using shellac. But I mean, let's get rudimentary real quick and let people know in case they're not familiar. There are only two different types of finishes in the world today, and you don't get thrown off by the way they're categorized. All right, one is called a popular one is called a surface finish. Another one is called a penetrating finish. And the differences between the two are pretty much this. Because first of all finishes penetrate to some extent. Some penetrate further into the piece you're working with rather than others, which is the surface finish, what we're talking about. Because, I mean, a surface finish has to penetrate, otherwise there's no bond. Okay, I mean, it's like, putting glue. It has to soak into the wood to some extent, otherwise there's no bond. But like popular surface finishes are polyurethane, shellac, lacquer, varnish, and this also includes water-based finishes. Okay, when you're using those types of finishes that are labeled as such, penetrating finishes are normally oils, and we're talking tongue oil, linseed oil, mineral oil, things of that nature. That because if you've ever watched a gentleman, I forget what his name, the name of his channel was, that makes those crazy cutting boards. If you've ever noticed it,
is it MTM wood?
Yeah, MTM wood. He takes his cutting boards and he throws them in a bath of mineral oil, and he does that for a reason, because the mineral oil soaks into the wood. Okay, he's not putting a surface finish on it; he's putting a penetrating finish on it. Okay, and there are very few finishes in the finishing world that kind of straddle the fence on being both, and one would be a varnish and the other would be a beeswax. And the reason being is because both of those finishes have an oil in them along with the resin, because the resin will sit on the top. Resin, no matter what kind of resin you're using, will sit on the top, but the oil will penetrate. So when you're looking at a varnish that's 1/3 solvent, 1/3 oil, 1/3 resin, you're looking at a finish that's going to absorb into the wood, but it's going to form on the top and give you a hard surface. Beeswax is the same thing. It's got an oil in it. The oil will absorb into the wood to a lesser extent, but the wax is the actual top finish that you're putting on that piece. But anything else is either what they consider a surface finish or a penetrating finish. So don't be confused about that. And for instance, like a varnish, and let me see if I can give you a prime example. Danish oil. Jamie and I were actually talking about this before we got on the air today. Danish oil is actually a varnish. Even though it says oil, it has resin in it. It is a surface finish. It's not a penetrating finish. So if you're using like linseed oil or tongue oil on a piece, and there's nothing wrong with those finishes. I'm just saying there's a basic understanding you have to have when using them, that before you go about going balls to the wall and thinking it will do something that it won't. Just understand what you're using.
Things like Danish oil are basically tongue oil mixed with a solvent to thin it down a bit, and then a varnish added to that. So it's like, and there's a 3-part mix ready done for you, isn't it?
Well, Danish oil is a varnish. it has a resin, it has an oil, and it has a solvent.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, obviously, the resin in a Danish oil is going to be less than what you might buy in a polyurethane. Because believe it or not, polyurethane, even though you don't know it, is actually a varnish. There is oil in polyurethane. It's just so much to a lesser extent that it's not even considered. But Danish oil is actually a true, what I would call varnish, even though it's not the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. It actually is a varnish because the top coat is a resin.
So Glyn Senior just said Danish oil in the States is a different make to up to date Danish oil in the UK. It's varnish based in the States.
Well, then my question to Glenn would be, whether if it's just an oil in the UK, then what oil are they using? And why is it considered Danish oil if it's different from here in the States? Because Watco, I believe, is a worldwide company that makes that varnish, that oil, all over the world.
I'm pretty sure.
If I'm wrong about that, then Glenn, I mean, trust me, I'll do my homework when we're done. But I don't think I'm wrong on this, man.
So I'm pretty sure Danish oil is like
if it's just a
brand
tongue
or a
oil and
trademark
something
or-
else, then that's fine. But then it's not really Danish oil; it's tongue oil.
Yeah, but so like if you do like
It's a
in
tongue
the UK
oil,
here,
it's a
you've got
tongue oil based.
you've got tongue oil, you've got Danish oil, you've got finishing oil. What other ones are there? So and they're all finishes and they're all basically the same makeup, but one company will use a different blend.
Resin.
They can't
Well,
use.
no, I understand, but all I'm trying
Chestnut
to
is the website.
all I was trying to get across is if it's called Danish oil, then there's a resin in it. What the resin is doesn't really matter. I'm just saying it may be the mixture may be different in the UK than it is in the States, but Danish oil is not just a flat out oil. Okay, it's just not.
No, it's a mixture. It's a
Yeah, it's not.
product. It's a product. Some of other things, definitely.
Glyn come back saying it's a polymerizing oil.
Okay, well then there's polymers in it, so that there's something other than just oil in that finish.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's the varnish component.
Cole seems to think the American version is better.
Of course he does. Way to go, Carl.
See, do you guys make up your own finishes, or do you just go to the store, but get it off the shelf and slap it on the work?
No, I will go to the store.
I've never done it. No.
I will go to the store and possibly buy polyurethane. But normally, if I'm buying polyurethane, it's because I'm going to mix a varnish. Richard, I make almost all my own finishes myself because what can I say? I'm a geek. I learned how to do this when I was very young, and it ends up, in the long run, if you don't mind the upfront expenditure, in the long run, you end up saving money by making it yourself if you know how to do it.
I can't even mix up part A and part B of resin together without making a mess.
Right.
I'm going to try doing that.
Makes a good cup of tea.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you a question, and this is, and you guys in the chat, let us know too, because I'd be interested in seeing your answers. And I know that the answers can be very project specific. So let's just do an overall answer. If you have an overall answer, then let's hear that. What is your favorite finish to use, Jamie?
So it kind of all depends on what I'm doing. So when it comes to scroll sawing, it's a spray lacquer, whether it's gloss or matte. Simple as. I've not yet done a painted one, so I can't really talk for that yet. But when it's a normal wood finish, it's like I say, spray gloss or matte lacquer. When it comes to wood turning, usually I stick at a Yorkshire grit microfine finish. That's me personally. That's all I believe it needs. However, if I decide to go further, then I'll probably go Hampshire Sheen high gloss, then Danish oil, or Danish oil, then Hampshire Sheen high gloss.
Okay.
Sorry, but I mean I've got a whole range of waxes like Canuba wax, microcrystalline wax, Carnocrystalline wax. Yeah, all sorts.
It just, like I said, it depends on the project. But if there's an overall finish,
Yeah.
for scroll sawing, you're talking lacquer. If you're working on a lathe, you're talking about Yorkshire grit.
Yeah. And I've got to say, Wayne the Woodturner told me to say Yorkshire grit, Glenn, so he can give me his job back.
Richard, do you have one that overall that you just have more success with than others, or?
I go through finishes like, most people go through pants and socks, to be honest, and a lot of that is because I end up doing a lot of different jobs for a lot of different people, and quite a number of those times the customer will dictate a finish. So that to me is a pain, because sometimes you're dealing with one thing and you prefer something else which is similar, but they've specified product A when product B or C is the one that you normally use, but they're very similar. Right. So that's a pain, but it's also good because it means I get to kind of play around with lots of different finishes, and then collect lots and lots of half-empty tins of different finishes, which is double-edged sword. But for me personally, taking all that aside, my kind of overall favourite finish and I pick it because it's the most widely kind of usable, is actually shellac, which you've already been talking about, is French polish, from flat stuff to turned things, friction polish on the lathe. Somebody in the chat's already mentioned the Shine Juice by
OB Shine Juice,
OB, and it's hilarious. I find finishing a mildly amusing topic from the point of view of people get really about it.
Yeah, they do.
particularly companies and marketeers, and you pretty much summed it up, Chris. It's there's two types, so two types. People,
A or B, baby.
Marketeers, there's only two types. If you mix, because I buy shellac as flakes as well. I don't buy bottles of French polish, because it actually goes off, for one thing, and it dries up, and the meths or the denatured alcohol will evaporate. So you end up with like a thick, stodgy, and so I like to mix it up myself in various ratios for various tasks, whether it's tool handles or plain handles,
kids' toys, whatever. Yeah,
kids, whatever it may be. But then you can take a tiny bit of that and dilute it to like half or a quarter, and you've got sanding sealer. You can chuck in a bit of walnut oil from the kitchen, and that becomes that Shine Juice stuff. You can add a little bit of linseed oil to it in the bottle, and that's actually how you use it on a rubber for French polishing a flat table. So it's a real kind of all-rounder. So that's why I like that. But it's also, like I said, a double-edged sword. Have you ever spilt French polish in the workshop?
Yes.
It's like the stickiest, horriblest, yuckiest, gunkiest, just dust magnet you've ever. It's horrible. I got a new miter saw. It cost me £700. 2 hours of using it, I spilt a jar of French polish over the blooming thing. It's like,
oh yeah.
I'm gonna agree with you, Richard. I'm gonna because if there's an overall, because obviously different finishes, different applications. We've covered that, but overall, my favorite finish to use is shellac, without a doubt, and it's because of a few things. But you, as you were alluding to, shellac can be very tricky to work with if you don't know what you're doing. But shellac can give, how we were talking about how oil will, soak into the wood, and then a varnish will give it a resin top. Now, varnish is an excellent choice to use when you want to have that depth into the wood that you're looking for. If you could look at the finish I'm talking about, when you're done with it, and it almost gives you like you look at the finish and you can almost look into the depth of the wood. What varnish does is it helps pop the grain, if that makes it any easier. Shellac can do the same thing, but shellac, I find, very unique only because there's no oil in shellac whatsoever. There's no water in shellac. Shellac is a denatured alcohol product that is basically a resin that has denatured alcohol mixed into it, depending on what cut of shellac you want. And I like shellac for a couple of reasons, mostly because no matter what you're doing in finishing, you should get one thing understood like immediately, is you should be looking to build a finish and not paint it once and walk away from it. You need to really build your finishes, which normally means thin coats, drying time, sanding, thin coat, drying time, sanding, thin coat, drying time, sanding, until you finally get to the point where you look at it and go, that is now done. That's why I was talking about being so patient at the end. Shellac, because of there are different tints of shellac that you can buy that will help pop the grain on woods more than others. And you can do, because if you ever deal, I mean, in French polishing, there's a process known as clear color clear. And you lay down a clear coat of shellac, and then over that you will take a different tint of shellac, whether it be a red or brown, whatever the case may be, and then you lay that over that's your second layer, and then you lay over the top of that a clear coat of shellac. Or the thing that I really like about shellac is it's a great undercoat, because even if you just do the clear color clear with shellac, you can always go back over the top of it with a varnish, and you won't disrupt it. The problem with shellac is, because it's a denatured alcohol-based product, is that it burns into the coat you had on previously. And so you have to be careful with it. If you put one coat of shellac on there and go, okay, call it a day, and you go to put the second coat of shellac on there and you start doing this with a brush, or you start doing this with a rag, you're going to screw it up, because it's alcohol, it will liquefy the coat underneath it, and then it will bond once it's dry.
It dissolves into the two, doesn't it?
It dissolves, and it's what's called burning into the finish below it. It burns into it because it will bond with that. So you have to be very careful on how you apply it. But what I do really like about shellac, it's not the fastest drying shellac. Finish in the world. Lacquer actually is. Shellac dries incredibly fast compared to an oil-based finish. And so you can go through all those steps I just talked about within an hour and be done. You really can. And you can get a quality finish on the piece. So then, for me, shellac is my go-to, but I know when to use a spar urethane. I know when to use a water-based poly. There are different projects that you want to use different finishes for. You just have to know what you're using them for. That's all.
I really like the water-based finishes, because that's just so easy to clear up afterwards.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I understand what you're saying about afterwards. I'm just not a fan of the final product. Old school. Old school.
I think that's going to be the overriding answer for anything. Pick a topic. Do you always get the my favorite tool brand, or my favorite car brand, or
right?
It's going to be one of those divisive things.
Well, that leads us right into Andy Pugh's first question. And Richard, I'll let you pick up on where we just left off. Andy says, is choice of finish a personal choice, or is there actually some science behind it?
I think there is science behind it. I think, if you ask the scientists at places like ICI when they were around, and, Glyn will talk to you about the science of Yorkshire grit. And I know that's not specifically a finish, but if you speak to Terry at Chestnut Finishes, he'll talk to you about the science behind it. I don't know what the science is. I go with I work to the sort of the analogy is like, I know how to tell the time, but I don't care how my watch works. As long as it does the job that it's supposed to do, that's okay with me. And then after that, it's how easy is it for me to use the thing? Is it a digital watch or an analog watch? That's probably the short answer.
So, personal choice? Is it a personal choice what finish you want to use, or is there a reason to use a finish on a certain piece?
For me, it is a personal choice based on how easy it is to use, and that includes clear up afterwards, and how easy it is to apply, and the speed at which I can apply it, assuming that it does the job that I want it to do. So, for example, I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't brush on shellac to an outside project.
Yeah, no.
Because although it's going to be fairly easy to do, it's not going to last.
It's not going to last. A spar urethane would. Yeah.
It's kind of like me. I wouldn't put Yorkshire grit on a scroll saw project.
No, and I wouldn't want to do that either, because then you'd be buffing your butt off in order to get it.
Talking of buffing, because you end up with wax and whatnot. Andy Heel has talked about a product. I saw it go past. It was Patina by Langlo, which isn't a particularly well publicized product, I don't think. It's a tin. I don't know what it is, but you put it on like wax and you buff it like a maniac, and it gives you a really nice kind of lustered patina type protective finish. There's only one place that I personally know to get it other than the internet, but that is a good product. It does take a lot to. It's a bit slimy though.
I made a finish like that in my shop once, and I buffed the heck out of it. And God, I even hate to bring it up what piece that I used it on, but I actually did it in the video, so I can't get away with it. I actually had a wax-based finish, much like what you're talking about, Richard, that I thought I had kind of developed on my own, but I still haven't looked into it to see if it was done before. And I found that after buffing it, and it did come out exactly as you said, but the finish didn't hold up. And I think it has more to do with the project I chose to use it on, as opposed to it, because it would have held up on an ornamental, but for something that was going to be handled and used, the finish didn't hold up because, hands touching things, going all over it. It just, the finish didn't hold up as well as it should have. So,
Yeah, so this isn't a wax per se.
It's a combination of different things. I'm still not going to tell you what it is, but because I haven't finished working on it yet.
Particular. Oh no, I wasn't expecting you to divulge your secret. I've got a mad scientist.
With the pot's boiling behind me, yeah, and waiting for lightning for Frankenstein to rise. Yeah, exactly. Well, I can tell folks that are just interested, since we're just going to cover all the bases today. Lacquer, if you're going to use lacquer is absolutely the hardest finish that you can find on the market today, to the best of my knowledge. But you have to be very careful with lacquer in only one respect. First of all, you need to spray lacquer. Okay, and I would suggest if most of us go by the rattle can and do that method, because actually professionally spraying lacquer, there's all sorts of things you have to learn about it, and putting lacquer retarders in and not getting blushing on your finishes. But lacquer is like the hardest finish that you can put on a piece. But you have to be careful because it is subject to cracking, because just as it may sound to you, being as hard as it is, it doesn't expand and contract very well. All right, so if you have like an end table, you want to do a lacquer top on it, make sure that top isn't in direct sunlight during the day, cold at night, direct sunlight, cold at night, because that finish will crack on you because it's that friggin' hard. You have to keep that in a controlled area and leave the elements away from it in order for it to continue to have any kind of longevity.
So go on, Chris. I'll let you finish before.
No, I'm done. I'm done. Go ahead. No, I'm done.
All right. So it's funny you say that, because I have actually heard of people coating the tops of tables and things like that in like resin. Like they'd get like let's say for argument, I think it was actually Alumilite that they used in this case. They covered a table with Alumilite, and they basically just left it in front of their table. I think they made like a river table or something like that. And basically what happened is the whole thing just sunk. And basically the resin just melted because it was in direct sunlight.
And I'll give you another clue about lacquer. Yeah, exactly, Jamie. That's exactly what we're talking about. But lacquer, there's two wood species of wood that you should never use lacquer on. If you hope to have a finish that lasts more than a month. One is mahogany, the other is rosewood, because the oils in those wood will destroy that lacquer finish. They will. Mahogany, and I'm not even going to tell you how I know this, okay? Just being honest here. It's mahogany and rosewood will kill a lacquer finish, and no doubt about it. And that's the same reason why you should not apply lacquer over the top of an oil-based stain. So if you've stained something with an oil-based stain, don't go putting lacquer over the top of it, because the oils that are in that stain will do the same thing. And it will cause, basically, it'll cause blushing. And if you don't know what blushing is, it's like, when you put your hot coffee cup down on top of your finished table, and then you forget about it, and you come back a day later, you pick it up, and there's that white ring there. That's blushing, okay? But the difference is that once you move the coffee cup, sometimes that white ring will go away. When you're spraying lacquer or doing anything else like that on woods like that or over that won't go away. It's just forget it. So spare yourself from applying lacquer over anything that is going to have oils that will destroy your finish, because it will. That's all. That's the best advice I got.
There we go.
Do you make your own finishes, Jamie, or do you?
I don't. That's something I've never tried. Yeah, everything I've ever used, I've purchased. So yeah,
because you carry methylated spirits in your workshop, don't you? You use.
I've actually just bought down. I've actually just bought 5 liters of it.
So this is a prime time for you. I would highly recommend. Hopefully, Chris will back me up here. Give it a go. Make some shellac-based sanding sealer, some friction polish for the lathe, because your mum's going to have, I don't know, walnut oil, olive oil.
Oh, yeah, she'll have all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
you've probably even got linseed oil in your
probably
your workshop anyway.
Use linseed oil before the walnut and the olive, if you don't mind. Go ahead.
Totally. Now you've got your meths and your oil. That's sanding sealer, that's friction polish, shine juice. That's all the finishes that you could ever particularly want that you can then mix up. You've only got to spend about 10 quid. I mean, not even that, probably about 4 quid from eBay for bag.
It just like Breaking Bad.
But you just have to play with it in order to realize what you're doing. Because, I mean, a lot of people don't even know this, that shellac, a very low pound cut of shellac is actually used as to prevent blotching before you put stain on. It's applied to wood. It's to prevent blotching on wood, because if you understand staining and what blotching is, and Richard, I know you know this, and Jamie, I'm sure you do as well. On a piece of board like this, you're going to have one piece here, the grain wise, it's going to be soft, and then this one is going to be hard. And so if you go applying a stain to a piece of wood that doesn't have a protective coating over the top of it, you're going to end up with blotching. And what you can do with shellac, and shellac is very specific to wood species, so you've really got to get into this and be a freaking nerd in order to know which pound cut of shellac to use on what kind of wood. And I don't expect anybody to do that except me. But it can be used as a color conditioner, so that you get an even coat of stain across the wood, and you don't end up with dark spot, light spot, dark spot, light spot. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just a fan of shellac. I just think it's a phenomenal product that you can use in a lot of different ways. And in case people aren't aware of it, most wooden musical instruments are finished in shellac. In case you didn't know that, and the reason for that being is because it's so durable, and it can handle the handling, and it will still polish up nice. But those instruments are, once again, that finish is built up over those instruments. Now, obviously, that's not the only ones. There are electric guitars that are finished in lacquer. But, I mean, I'm talking like violins, cellos, bass. I'm talking about traditional wood instruments. The most of them are finished in shellac.
Yeah. Wayne the Woodturner says shellac is used to give the shine on M&Ms.
It is. And that's why it's food safe. So if you want to do like what Jamie and I were talking about earlier, if you want to do cereal bowls, turn cereal bowls on a lathe and then finish them in shellac, you're perfectly safe, because not only will it protect the wood, but it's not going to give you any kind of toxins. And I don't want to get into that whole, because that's a can of worms we could open up that we probably shouldn't at this point in time about food safe finishes.
Emma, where's it gone? I think it was Emma.
Recipe, please, Richard. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So I don't really use a recipe. I just make it up. You get the flakes. You get it's like making cereal. Yeah. You get a bowl, or in this case, a jam jar. You put in your flakes. You put in your meths, cornflakes and milk. If I allow, Chris,
I actually have the actual recipe.
Go ahead. Generally, people talk about French polishes and shellacs in, like Chris has already said, pound cut weights or ratios, and the pound relates to 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds of shellac flakes in weight, mixed with a gallon, I think it is, of meths. That's methylated spirits in the UK, or denatured alcohol for certainly the States. Other shelf names may apply in your local area, but certainly in the UK it's methylated spirits. Now in the UK it's purple, because what they do is they put a colouring in it to stop the winos drinking it. I suspect it's because like literally people drink the stuff. But if you want it clear, leave it in the sun or in daylight for months, and the dye will fade out and it'll become clear.
Well, you know what you can do? Here's a quick hint. If you want to go around that loop and not do that kind of stuff, go to any store that sells camping equipment. Any place that sells camping equipment will sell you the spirits for your camping stove. That is denatured alcohol, and that won't be colored. So if you don't want to deal with that, then go buy the camping stove fluid, because that's denatured alcohol.
Yeah, I think actually in the UK it might be different to that, Chris, because they do smell different. I know, like the Trangia burners, they use methylated spirits, and then, again, it's purple. I think it's one of these kind of legality. In order to sell it, it's got to be.
I'm wondering if you guys are running kerosene on camping stoves. Then maybe it's kerosene that you guys are using for those things, and not alcohol.
Camping stoves in the UK are
gas,
and this is going back a few years. Yeah, you get the gas, you get butane, propane, and mix, and you get the ones like you said, where you have to pressurize them yourself. The fuel for that's clear it smells different to.
Okay.
Methylated.
You're talking about like a Zippo lighter.
Well, anybody.
Yeah, so lighter fuel is not methylated spirit. Anyway, in the UK, it's methylated spirits, and I think it is in Europe as well. But actually, unless you're using
probably everywhere in the world except America, but go ahead.
could well be. So unless basically you're using a blonde, a de-waxed blonde shellac, which is like Chris was saying, clear stuff, having the colour in it doesn't actually make any difference at all. So if you convert your pound weight into metric grams and then convert gallons into litres, and then you can work out from that.
I'll give it to you right now. 8 ounces of methate or denatured alcohol to 1 ounce of shellac is a 1 pound cut. Okay, 8 ounces of denatured 8 ounces of denatured alcohol to 2 ounces of shellac is a 2 pound cut, and then so on and so forth. And for what it's worth, if you go to the store and you buy the shellac off the shelf, that is typically a 3 pound cut. They always cut it to be 3 ounces of shellac to 8 ounces of denatured alcohol, and so it's a much heavier finish. And I think they do that because they know that people like to be finished and done, so they put more shellac in there. I never use a 3 pound cut. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm not even saying what I'm doing is right. I mean, you, as always, whatever's right for you is right for you. I mean, I just don't happen to do that. I use a 2 pound cut shellac in my shop all the time.
Totally. So I'll take that and dilute it down even further. So if I've got,
you can do that for different purposes. Absolutely.
Totally. So if you want it to penetrate deeper, or if you want it to be much thinner, or if you want to use it as a sanding sealer, then dilute it down even more. And then if you take that diluted sanding sealer and mix it with 50-50, then mix it with an oil like linseed oil, walnut oil, vegetable oil out of the kitchen, you can use that as a friction polish on the lathe, because your friction, this is the funny thing, friction polish, all it is you're putting shellac on the lathe, and the oil acts like oil in a car. It's a lubricant to stop it snagging and going all stick it. Yeah. No, not at all. Not in this case at all. So it actually, if you leave it, it will separate. You get 2 layers of the stuff. Right. So you shake it up, and it's still separated, but at a much smaller level. Amount. So as you put it on the lathe, with the lathe moving, the oil acts as a lubricant. So what you'll do is the heat of the friction will evaporate the spirit. The shellac will dry and harden, and you'll end up with the oil as like a greasy film on the thing that you can then basically wipe off, and it becomes hard. So that's how you can do that as well when you French polish. It's kind of a weird thing. That's what happens with the shine juicy stuff.
Well, we didn't have a lot of questions out there today about finishes, so I guess we're done. I was going
to sleep tonight.
Yeah, it's like I told you this topic was boring. Anyway, Jamie, it's time for you to well, anyway, just let me. Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Mute. What's the mute button?
Rich has got his headphones in. It's time for Jamie's page. So, as always, right? So, have you ever wanted stickers? Well, of course you have. But this time you get £20 off at checkout. All you got to do is go to makersinternationalpodcast.com/stickers. Click the link or click on the picture. It will take you to a website. It's a one email, one use kind of deal. So if you've ever used it on that an email before, just set up another email and you'll get your £20 off at checkout. So all good there. This isn't my shout out, but it's going to be an honourable mention, kind of regarding the topics of what we've been talking about today. So Mr. Chris Cute does have a YouTube channel, surprisingly.
Believe it or not. It's been unattended for quite some time. He does
have a wide library talking about finishes and all that sort of stuff on his YouTube channel. So make sure you go and check all that sort of stuff out. If you want to know about any of that sort of stuff. One video in particular I would definitely go and check out is he makes a barbecue cart from 2x4 pine. And that's just to show you what you can do with basically crap.
With finishes, yeah, because that thing looks good because of the finish I put out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's that. So on to my shout out. My shout out today comes out of the woodshop.tv. But it isn't going to Carl. It isn't going to Robin. It's actually going to Carl's boy Hayden. He done his first bowl on Carl's lathe. Apparently he's turned a few things, but this weekend was the first time turning a bowl. It came out absolutely incredible. I had a chance to hang out with Hayden briefly for a couple of hours. He's a good lad, so yeah. My shout out goes to Hayden or Cole on Cole's channel. There you go.
Awesome.
So sorry, I don't have a shout out this week.
I just want to quickly mention something. Andy Pughes just said something. Caitlin and the cat got mentioned by Mate Magazine for her wooden rings.
Good for you, Caitlin. Awesome.
Nice.
Right. Awesome.
So, and speaking of Caitlin, she's got a premiere at 11:15 today in about 45 minutes, and I've got 1.5 hours.
A little pat on the back there, Caitlin. Good for you. Do it for yourself, girl. Good for you. And since Jamie mentioned it, I'll throw the link to that video Jamie was talking about in the chat, because why not pimp my stuff? You know, I very rarely do so, but you know, actually I agree with Jamie on that one. That was Jamie, if you remember, that was a video I did after I had injured myself prior. It was the first video I had done coming back. So yeah. Anyway, if you want to watch it, go there. At least that'll show you what finishes can do to, crap wood, which was 2x4.
When you do it properly.
Yeah. My shout out this week goes to, he doesn't even need the shout out, but I'm going to give it to him anyway. Goes to Paul Jackman and that stupid Est-wing friggin' hammer he made. Did you guys see that thing?
Yeah.
Paul, it's hard not to love Paul Jackman. And, that was just crazy stupid. But everything Paul does on that scale of things is pretty crazy stupid. But it was sponsored by, I think it was Carolina Shoes and also, what's the grinding tools?
Arbortech.
Arbortech.
Yeah, thank you. God, I was about to have to apologize to Paul for not remembering his sponsors. Anyway, so if you haven't checked that out, Paul posted it. I believe he released it on last Friday. So go check that out if you haven't checked it out yet. And I'm sure a lot of you probably already have seen it, but it was just a good video. It's Jackman.
Yeah.
So I got completely distracted there. I was only half listening to your shout outs. I don't have a shout out this week because I've been crazy busy working, but just for a point of reference to anyone still listening, Andy Pugh has said in the chat that methylated spirits without the purple dye is available in the UK as shellac thinners in inverted commas. Yeah.
There you go.
So I
did not know that.
I just had a quick Google. He's absolutely right. It totally is. And I didn't realise that Chestnut Finishes in the UK sells it as a product. One thing I would say is, that's wood with 2 O's and not an O and a U. It's about twice the price of the methylated spirits with the purple. So that, whatever. Personally, I just use the purple stuff when I use it in normal shellac because it doesn't actually make any difference to the colouring of the shellac, only if you're looking to put the really clear de-wax stuff on there. So, I'd save the quid and
right, awesome
flakes.
Well, done and dusted, boys.
Yeah.
Wicked. Does that kind of about wrap up the show? Does it?
I'm pretty sure.
I think it does, mate. I think it does.
Blimey. Are we doing an after party? We're not on Patreon.
Yeah.
We're on Patreon, but we're doing an after party free for a little while.
Might as well.
Maybe not.
If you want to. Jamie's got maybe 15 minutes to spare before his premiere tonight, so we can do that. Let's just get out of here and say goodbye.
Excellent. Well, in that case, I will thank everyone for listening in the live chat and suggest you hang around for a few minutes if you can. If you can't, it doesn't matter. If you do, we won't say what we like about you. Until next week when we talk about something else. I've no idea what. Hopefully Chris does.
No, I don't.
You all take care.
Have a great week, everybody.
See you later, everybody.